Netanyahu is back in D.C., this time to have discussions with Donald Trump, but not just Donald Trump, also to visit Congress. He is here to pick up another check and also discussing a new deal of sorts. Let's go ahead and get into that, ladies and gentlemen. Trump has a deal for Netanyahu when they meet Tuesday, which was today. Will he take it? Oh, buddy, let's dive into this here. It says negotiations have begun for a second phase of a ceasefire deal that would end the war with Hamas and return all Israeli hostages from captivity in Gaza. Also on the table is a bargain that could reshape the Middle East for decades to come. A deal to open Israel's diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. Now, why is this shocking, folks? You guys know Saudi Arabia kind of dabbles, with two different teams. Like, they're friends with the U.S., but they're also friends with China and Russia, too. They party a little bit with BRICS, but they also party a little bit with the West. So it almost seems like in order for Netanyahu and Likud party to secure this capture of the rest of the land in the Middle East, it sounds like they need some type of support from Saudi Arabia. And whether or not Saudi Arabia is going to do that, I don't know. They have been known to be a fair weather friend. So sometimes they'll just be like, yeah, we're going to do it. And they're like, I don't know, and they're going to be looking for something in the deal for them as well. Now, it goes on to say another central question to resolve. Excuse me there. Whether Israel will launch a military strike on a weakened Iran, shorn after a year of intense fighting against its proxies. So here we go, folks. And this is the part I want people to really pay attention to. They're itching to go after Iran. The Likud party is itching. Remember, they don't want Iran there. Regardless if Iran chooses not to use any weapons at all, they don't want Iran there. Benjamin Netanyahu said in front of Congress himself, he said that it was a curse. And he said the blessing was with Iran gone. Of course, Israel having the West Bank and Israel having Gaza too. They see it as a curse. They want the Palestinian people gone. They don't want Iran there either. This has to just deal with not just obviously ethnic cleansing, but also trade, commerce, resources. There's a lot of things at play here. Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, played a key role in persuading Netanyahu to accept the ceasefire first phase. And Trump wants to see the deal continue until all hostages are freed and the war is over in order to focus on the Saudi-Israeli peace deal. Now, see, guys, everybody has to keep in mind, remember, when Benjamin Netanyahu talked about his plan of a greater Israel, that included part of Syria, that included part of Lebanon, a small piece of Jordan, if I remember correctly. And it seems like in order for this to really go through, it's almost like they have a better chance of other Arab nations accepting this if Saudi Arabia gives them the green light. That's almost what it seems like to me. Now, this part right here, Netanyahu's political future and legacy. The main challenge Netanyahu faces is from Smotrich, Israel's finance minister, who wants the war to continue until Hamas is destroyed, which I think we all know is not going to happen, right? We know they're not going to destroy Hamas. They haven't destroyed Hamas yet, or even come close to that. A task Israeli defense analyst believes that's unrealistic so long as Hamas continues to hold Israeli hostages and Israel does not endorse a viable alternative leadership for Gaza. So, long story short, Benjamin Netanyahu is here in D.C. He is here to get more money, not just more money, but also this, green light to go ahead and just basically take what's left of the West Bank. I want to go ahead and bring in this clip here, ladies and gentlemen.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet with President Trump at the White House this afternoon to discuss the ceasefire in Gaza. Speaking to reporters at the Oval Office yesterday, Mr. Trump expressed little confidence that the ongoing truce is viable.
I have no assurances that it'll hold. I mean, I've seen people brutalized. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. No, I have no guarantees that the peace is going to hold.
For the latest, let's turn to Claudia Lavanga. Claudia, good morning. Netanyahu already met with the president's Mideast envoy. How did those talks go?
Good morning, Francis. Well, at least according to the Israeli Prime Minister office, who issued a statement, this morning, those talks with the envoy by President Trump were positive and friendly. They also announced that they will send a team to Doha at the end of the week to start talking about phase 2 of the ceasefire. But not everyone in the Israeli government wants to get to phase 2. The Interior Minister has already resigned, and recently, the Finance Minister has also threatened to resign if Israel doesn't go back to fight Hamas in Gaza after phase 1, despite the fact that there will still be Israeli hostages in Gaza. And this is something that will potentially torpedo the ceasefire agreement and, of course, worries the families of the hostages who are still there. Just take a listen.
The extremists in Israel's government and coalition are attempting to sabotage the deal. They want to resume the war at the expense of the hostages' lives. I don't trust Netanyahu to bring my son home from captivity, but I do trust you, Mr. President. I know you will bring my Matan and the rest of the hostages home.
Well, in the meantime, the leader of the opposition in Israel, Lapid, said that his party will offer support to the government to make sure that it has a safety net to guarantee that the ceasefire holds. A message to Netanyahu, but also President Trump ahead of their meeting there. Francis?
Okay, and I want to bring you recent news as well, because it sounds like the decision has already been made. I'll get to that in just a second. But as you all know, of course, Code Pink is encouraging everybody to fight back against Benjamin Netanyahu's visit here in D.C. As you can see it here, listen to what Medea Benjamin had to say.
So the war criminal Netanyahu arrived last night in Washington, D.C. Boo! And there are people outside the Blair House where he's staying, and we're here in the Senate because we heard he's coming to the Senate today. So we are looking around for the war criminal who needs to be arrested.
And do you know why he's staying at the Blair House instead of the Watergate? Well, it was because all the protesters that were at the Watergate the last time he was here made sure he couldn't sleep at night, and so they think he's going to get a good night's sleep at the Blair House, and he's not going to get it. We're going to be there 24 hours a day.
Even the Watergate doesn't want him.
Arrest the war criminal.
Okay, but they are not arresting the war criminal, and I sincerely hope you get a chance to watch the interview that I did with Colonel Larry Wilkerson. He was a colonel under Colin Powell during the George W. Bush administration, who heavily disagreed with the war in Iraq and what is happening now as well. I recorded that interview, and he reveals some things about the U.S. government, and I think you guys need to hear that. That should premiere on Thursday, because I won't be live Thursday. Have other plans, but that interview will premiere, I believe, during the afternoon. So make sure you check that out, because he goes into a lot more detail. Now, I do have this statement here from Donald Trump right now. So I do want to go ahead and add this information from the conference. Donald Trump explaining what is going to happen with Gaza. And let me go ahead and put this here. Let's go ahead and bring this in. I do not want people to see this as a surprise. I expected this to happen. I called this to happen. If Donald Trump wasn't president, this was still going to happen. And I'll explain that a little bit later, but let's get into this announcement here, ladies and gentlemen.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks. We are actually a very respected nation again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too.
So Donald Trump is saying the quiet part out loud. The U.S. is going to take over the Gaza Strip. But if you look back at Kamala Harris's, I think her first speech about Gaza before she was announced as the nominee, Kamala Harris, remember, she gave that speech on the bridge in Selma, and she said, Gaza will have to be rebuilt. I want to be very clear when I say this, ladies and gentlemen, and this is not me taking cover for Trump. I don't like this mofo either. But I want to be very clear. I want you to understand something. Both political parties agree with what Israel is doing. Now, some members of those parties may not agree with the death toll, may not agree with the images of the children, etc. But the parties agree with what Israel is doing. Not only do they agree with it, they're the leader of it. You see, this is something that I found out when I talked to Colonel Wilkerson. As many times as I've said on the show that the U.S. is basically Israel's bitch, that the U.S. does whatever Israel wants them to do. When I spoke to Colonel Wilkerson, who was very much involved in that space, he made it very clear that people have it backwards. The U.S. is telling Israel what to do. AIPAC exists because the U.S. wants it to exist. Now, I say U.S., I don't mean us, but the powers that be in the U.S. government. The reason why they don't try to let's get rid of this corporate money, let's get rid of PACs like AIPAC, is because our government wants it there. And the government leadership wants it there. I want to be very clear because I had to really check myself with this one. As many times as I've told you, the U.S. is just doing whatever Israel wants it to do. I had it backwards too. And I'm woman enough to admit that I had it wrong. The U.S. is the one that's been telling Israel what to do. The U.S. wants this to happen in the Middle East, the U.S. government. And the reason why they do is because of the resources that are there. And because when you hear people say that we have to protect Israel because that's a part of U.S. interests, it's because they're located where they're located. This is the final phase of colonialism. So yes, the U.S. government is currently and has been all along supporting a settler colonial project. And it's easier to point the fingers and say it's because of AIPAC. Yeah, that's easy when you follow the money. But then you have to ask this question. Why is AIPAC still there? Why is it that the powers that be, the leadership in these parties, why don't they make a move to stop having people take the money? You see Congress members that have been lost their seats. They lost their seats because of the money that's coming from AIPAC. What I want you guys to understand is they're all in on it. And it's not just people who say, people point fingers and they say it's the evangelicals that want it. It's not just them. It's those who see the need for them to be there because of the resources in the region that they do not want Iran or other Arab countries in that area to even get a taste of it. When these people stood up in front of you, Biden, Kamala, and they told you the Palestinian people need self-determination. When Antony Blinken told you that we need to get some type of a two-state solution, these people are actors. These people were lying. They've been lying over and over. They don't want a two-state solution. They just said that to save a little bit of face and have a little bit of dignity left after the genocide. They approve of everything that Israel is doing. They don't want the Palestinian people there either. They want Israel to have control over the resources right there in the Middle East. And that's the final colonial project. Trump says the quiet part out loud. Unlike Kamala and Biden, he didn't even try to pretend like he cared about the Palestinian people. He just let you know right out front, the U.S. is going to take Gaza and the Palestinian people are going to have to leave. The reason why a lot of people have this type of, vitriol towards Donald Trump is because he has no filter. He says these quiet things out loud. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that Biden and Kamala also had the same agreement. Some of the money that Netanyahu is coming to collect this week in DC was already approved by Joe Biden before Donald Trump took over in the White House. So the billion that we're talking about, don't forget, some of this came from Biden. So this is not a defense of Donald Trump, but I am here to tell you, because some people are saying you guys shouldn't have voted third party. Look at what you got. First of all, the math doesn't even add up that way. People learn how to do math. Because with all the third party votes combined, Kamala Harris still loses by a lot. So that's not even the case. That being said, I do not want you to think that Kamala and Biden would not be on board with it. They were always on board, but they were trying to be more quiet about it. Donald Trump says it out in the open. I'm heavily, heavily against this. This is not, we're going to rebuild it and make it better for the people. This is gentrification 1,000 times over. These people are not going to be able to stay there. If any of you live in a community that has been rebuilt, you know from experience what happens after they rebuild. Usually the people who are there are pushed out. They're done, gone. They have to go somewhere else. He made it very clear to you earlier when he said, I'm trying to get Egypt to take the Palestinian people. They were already refugees. The people in Gaza were already pushed out. And now they're trying to get Egypt. And I heard Indonesia, like all these different countries to try to take the Palestinian people, and they want the land. Listen.
We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
Pause. Now, let me show you the confliction here, right? So if you're going to level it out, which is what he just said, how are the people going to be able to stay there while you level it out? They're not going to be able to stay there. So the people are going to have to leave. And then they'll level it out and they'll rebuild. And guess what? They're not going to let them come back. They will be refugees again.
Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again.
You heard what he said, build American strength throughout the region. And it's interesting, you talk about killing and bloodshed, but you got the killer sitting up there, right up there on the stage right next to you. The killer in chief is this guy right here, right? Benjamin Netanyahu is the killer in chief. That's who the killer is. And the way that this is going, like I said before, guys, whatever you do, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, Do not forget what happened. Don't you let them, when you have children, make sure you teach your children the truth. Because I can guarantee you right now, if you have a 5-year-old, no, maybe not 5-year-old, if you have a baby, by the time they're old enough to go to school, I'm willing to bet you the history books are going to paint a different picture. Tell your kids the truth. So he's here and he'll be here to ask for more money. And then there's this situation with Iran. And I want you to hear what Trump said about Iran. This is a fear tactic here from Israel. Listen to this.
It's Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani.
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do, not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That'd be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. And they shouldn't be able to do it. And Biden should have said that, but he never did. I don't know why, lack of intelligence, perhaps. But he never said it. If that happens to a leader or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran.
So this is an Israel fear tactic. They're trying to get people, again, notice this is Fox News, right? They're trying to make it seem like, oh, Iran might try to assassinate Netanyahu or you or anybody and da-da-da. So do you see they're already painting the narrative? So if something were to happen to Benjamin Netanyahu, they can go back to this tape and say, see, we tried to warn you. Does this sound familiar? Because if you remember the Iraq War, they're playing, it's the same playbook, it's the same script. Please make sure you watch my interview with Colonel Wilkerson, who was a part of the George W. Bush administration and was heavily against these wars. And then listen to what he says about Iranian oil. I'm trying to tell you guys what's coming.
They cannot have a nuclear weapon. With me, it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We don't want to be tough on Iran. We don't want to be tough on anybody, but they just can't have a nuclear weapon.
Mr. President, are you going to engage in conversations with your counterpart in Iran?
I would.
Do you want to block the sale of Iranian oil to other nations?
Well, we have the right to do that, and that's what I did before, and they had no money. They wouldn't have had the money for Hamas or Hezbollah or anybody else. It could have been solved, this thing. It just, if things went the way they should have, this would have been over long ago, but it's not over.
How close do you think Iran is to developing a nuclear weapon?
I think they're close. They're too close. But again, you could go back 4 years. I would have said they would have had it during this intervening period. But they're pretty close, Peter.
And why is Iran happy to sign it if it's Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani?
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do.
Yeah, we heard that part. So basically, and sorry, the volume for that video is just very low. But what he was saying is that the U.S. has the right to block the sale of Iranian oil to other nations. Why? For all the people that continue to tell me that you believe in free market capitalism, that's what Donald Trump says. Didn't Joe Biden also say he believed in free market capitalism? Kamala Harris also believed in free market capitalism. Elizabeth Warren, I'm a capitalist, she said. So if you believe in free market capitalism, why do you have the right to block oil sales from another country to someone else? Because if you love free market capitalism, you should be totally fine with competition. So this is another example to show you it's all bullshit. When they say they're fine with, they love competition, they love free market capitalism, what they're really trying to say is that they love it just for the US. They don't want other countries to try to compete. Beware of what is already happening right now. They are already starting the fear mongering about Iran. They are already starting to tell you that Iran may do this. Oh, they're developing a nuclear weapon. Just like back when they told you that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. I sincerely hope the American people are going to be smart enough to not fall for this again, regardless of what political party you side with. I sincerely hope you guys are not going to fall for the whole okey doke again. They're developing this. What a mess, man. What a mess. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.